Hello, my dear friends. If you enjoy this story, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your support, and now let's begin.
Sometimes a marriage begins to die not after an affair, but after too many identical breakfasts. Jennifer realized this one July morning when Mark asked for the third time that week whether they were out of coffee. The jar was standing directly in front of him. She said nothing. She simply pushed it closer and looked through the window at the road scorched white by the sun. The Red Rock Motel stood beside an old stretch of Route 66, where fewer cars passed with every year. Once, families, musicians, truck drivers, and young couples had traveled this road, certain that a new life waited somewhere ahead. Now the motel was more often visited by exhausted drivers, accidental tourists, and people who did not want to explain where they were going. Jennifer liked guests like that. They rarely complained about the aging air conditioners and never asked unnecessary questions. She and Mark had been running the motel for almost 10 years. They had bought it cheaply after the previous owner died and invested everything they had in the repairs. Mark painted the doors dark red, replaced the wiring, and restored the neon sign with his own hands. Jennifer came up with the name, redesigned the front desk, and convinced her husband not to throw away the old jukebox. During the first years, they worked themselves nearly unconscious and still found the energy to kiss in the laundry room and make love in empty rooms. Sometimes they locked the front door early, switched off the sign, and spent the night in the swimming pool, back when it still held water. Now the pool had been filled with sand. The jukebox was silent more often than it played. And they went to bed at the same time, but each of them faced a different wall. Their marriage could not honestly be called unhappy. It was dependable, peaceful, and painfully predictable. Mark had never cheated on her. Jennifer had never searched for another man either. They paid bills, discussed repairs, and ate dinner twice a week at the same roadside diner. They still loved each other. Love had simply become like an old piece of furniture, so familiar that you stopped noticing it was there. Tiffany appeared at noon, when the heat had silenced even the cicadas. Jennifer was sitting behind the front desk sorting invoices when the bell above the door rang. A woman stood in the doorway with a travel bag and a pair of cheap sunglasses. Her blonde hair was tied in a careless ponytail, and her face carried a weariness that even her tan could not hide. She looked about 35. She wore denim shorts, a white shirt, and scuffed boots that seemed far too heavy for the heat. "I heard you need a housekeeper," she said. Jennifer looked up from the papers. "Who told you?" "The woman at the gas station 5 miles from here. Mary talks too much. Today I'm grateful for it." The woman removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were green, calm, and slightly guarded. "My name is Tiffany." "Jennifer. I can start today. You haven't even asked what we pay." Tiffany shrugged. "I need somewhere I can work and not think about my past for a while." Jennifer knew the expression of someone who wanted to disappear. Years earlier, she had come to this town after a fight with her father and had not planned to stay longer than a week. 3 days later, she met Mark. A year after that, she married him. "Do you have experience?" Jennifer asked. "I worked at a hotel in Tulsa." "Why did you leave?" "I got divorced." The answer was brief, but not cold. Tiffany was not asking for sympathy. She was simply marking a boundary she did not yet want anyone to cross. Jennifer showed her the rooms, the laundry area, and the small staff room behind the office. It was cramped but clean. There was a bed, a wardrobe, and an old air conditioner that made so much noise it sounded as if a small storm lived inside it. "You can stay here for a while," Jennifer said. Tiffany ran a hand over the bedspread. "Thank you. Don't thank me too soon. I'm not afraid of hard work. There is less hard work here than there are strange people." Tiffany smiled for the first time. After my ex-husband, I'm not easily surprised. Mark saw her later that afternoon. He came back from the rear yard, where he had been repairing the water pump, covered in dust with dark patches of sweat on his t-shirt. Jennifer stood outside room 3, explaining to Tiffany where the clean towels were kept. Mark stopped. Only for a second. But Jennifer noticed. She noticed everything that involved her husband. Tiffany turned toward him. You must be Mark. Probably. He wiped his palm on his jeans and held out his hand. Welcome to the finest motel on this stretch of highway. Jennifer gave a dry laugh. We're the only motel on this stretch. Exactly why we're the finest. Tiffany laughed. Her laughter was low and warm. Mark smiled too. Jennifer saw his gaze remain on Tiffany's face slightly longer than politeness required. Then he looked at the open collar of her shirt. Not crudely. Not long enough to make Tiffany feel undressed. But long enough for his wife to notice. Is the pump working again? Jennifer asked. Mark seemed to wake up. For now. So, until morning. Don't murder my optimism. He walked toward the office, but looked back once. Tiffany did not notice. Jennifer did. Something uncomfortable shifted inside her chest. But it was not jealousy. It was closer to unexpected curiosity. That evening, Tiffany finished cleaning and returned to the staff room. Mark sat outside the owner's house with a bottle of beer. Jennifer joined him and lowered herself into the chair beside his. The road shimmered in the hot air. The neon sign came alive, painting the sand red. The new girl works hard, Mark said. You had time to inspect her work? He looked at his wife. What is that supposed to mean? Nothing. Jen. I only asked. Mark took a drink. She's beautiful. Jennifer had expected him to deny the obvious. Instead, he told the truth. Something warm and strange moved inside her. Yes, she said. Mark turned his head. You're not angry? Because you have eyes? Women usually get angry. Men usually start lying before anyone has even accused them of anything. He laughed quietly. Jennifer looked toward the dark motel windows. Behind one of them, Tiffany's shadow moved. She had let down her hair and stood near the mirror, lifting her arms to remove her shirt. The curtains were almost closed. Almost. Jennifer felt Mark become still beside her. He could see the silhouette too. She could have told him to stop watching. She could have stood up, blocked the view, or reminded him of basic decency. Instead, she remained seated. She thinks the curtains are closed, Mark said quietly. Probably. We should tell her they don't meet properly. Tomorrow. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The silhouette vanished. Mark lowered his eyes to the bottle. That was wrong. You didn't do anything. I watched. Jennifer ran one finger around the rim of her glass. So did I. He looked up at her. A tension appeared between them that she had not felt in years. Not resentment. Not suspicion. Something darker, warmer, and more dangerous. Let's go to bed, she said. That night, for the first time in a long while, Mark pulled her close without being asked. His hand settled on her thigh, and his lips touched her neck. Jennifer immediately knew who he was thinking about. To her own surprise, she did not want him to stop. Tiffany quickly became part of life at the Red Rock. She woke before everyone else, brewed strong coffee, and cleaned the rooms with a small radio playing nearby. Sometimes old blues drifted through the open doors. Sometimes it was country music, which Mark called music for people who had survived too many divorces. Then it's my kind of music, Tiffany replied. The guests liked her. She knew how to smile in a way that made tired men soften their voices and women stop complaining about rough towels. She did not flirt intentionally. She simply moved with the natural confidence of a woman who had spent too long trying not to be noticed and had finally grown tired of hiding. Jennifer sometimes watched Tiffany change the sheets. Her shirt tightened across her back as she bent over the bed. Blonde hair fell across her face. She tossed it aside with a sharp movement of her head and continued working. Mark also began finding more reasons to appear near occupied rooms. A lamp needed replacing. An air conditioner had started making noise. A door lock suddenly required inspection. Jennifer said nothing. She watched. Mark tried not to be obvious, which only made his behavior more obvious. One evening, Jennifer was looking for him near the laundry room. The sun was already sinking behind the desert hills, washing the motel in warm orange light. The door to room 9 stood slightly open. Tiffany was cleaning inside and humming softly. Mark stood in the corridor. He did not enter. He simply looked through the narrow opening. Tiffany was adjusting the curtains. She wore a thin tank top that clung to her back after the hot day. When she lifted her arms, the fabric rose slightly and revealed a strip of skin above her jeans. Mark held his breath. Jennifer approached without making a sound. "Enjoying the view?" she asked. Mark flinched and turned sharply. "Damn it, Jen. Don't swear near the guests." "I wasn't spying." "Of course not. I wanted to ask whether the air conditioner was working." "And you decided to judge its performance by looking at her back?" He rubbed a hand over his face. "I'm acting like an idiot." "A little. You should be angry." Jennifer leaned against the wall. "Why do you want me to be angry so badly?" "Because then this would be easier." "For whom?" Mark looked toward the room. Tiffany still had not noticed them. "I love you." "I know. I'm attracted to her." "I know that too." He frowned. "And what are you going to do?" "Nothing yet." Jennifer turned and walked toward the house. Mark caught up with her near the office. "What does yet mean?" "Exactly what I said." "Jennifer." She stopped. "Do you want her?" Mark was silent too long. "I'm not going to cheat on you." "That isn't what I asked." He looked directly into her eyes. "Yes." The answer hit harder than she expected. But beneath the pain, another sensation quickly appeared. Sharp and almost exciting. Mark wanted another woman. But he was admitting it to his wife. He was not hiding. He was not sending secret messages. He was not inventing reasons to leave. He stood in front of her, tired, embarrassed, and honest. "She's younger than me," Jennifer said. "Only 5 years." You remembered. "Jen. I'm curious." "About what?" "The way you look at her." Mark ran his hand over her shoulder. "I don't want to hurt you. You haven't done anything yet. But I think about it. We all think about things we may never actually do." He studied his wife for a long time. "Do you think about her?" Jennifer felt heat build inside her. She could have lied. But after his honesty, lying felt cowardly. "Sometimes." Mark moved closer. "In what way?" "The same way you do." His lips parted slightly. "You want her?" "I don't know." "You've never looked at women." "I didn't say I wanted a woman." "Then what?" Jennifer ran her fingers over his chest. "I like the way you change when she's near." "How do I change?" "You look again." "At her." "Then at me." She kissed him first. Hard, almost angrily. Mark answered immediately. His hands closed around her waist and drew her nearer. They kissed outside the office like young people afraid of being caught. Jennifer tasted beer on his lips and felt his heavy breathing. When Mark pulled away, his eyes held the hunger she had been missing. "Let's go inside," he whispered. "Wait." She looked toward the half-open door of room 9. Tiffany stepped into the corridor carrying a basket of laundry. When she saw them, she stopped. Her gaze moved over Mark's hands on Jennifer's waist. A faint smile touched her lips. "Sorry," Tiffany said. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You aren't interrupting," Jennifer replied. Tiffany looked at her more carefully. There was something in that pause beyond ordinary embarrassment. "I'm finished," she said. "Do you need anything else?" Mark remained silent. Jennifer noticed the tension in his hand. "Not tonight," she answered. "Get some rest." Tiffany walked past them. As she came close, Jennifer caught the scent of soap, dust, and light perfume. Tiffany looked into her eyes. Only for a second. But there was nothing accidental in that look. Later, in their bedroom, Jennifer asked, "Did you see the way she looked at me?" Mark lay beside her, still breathing heavily. "I thought she was looking at me." "Men always think that." "Then who was she looking at?" Jennifer smiled in the darkness. "We'll find out soon." 2 days later, Tiffany asked for a day off. She wanted to go into town, buy some clothes, and collect documents her former husband had sent through the mail. Jennifer offered to drive her. Mark wanted to go with them, but she refused. "Someone has to watch the motel. We have 2 guests. One of them has already tried to steal towels twice." Mark looked at her suspiciously. "Are you two planning something?" "We're buying shampoo." Now I'm even more worried. The drive into town took 40 minutes. Tiffany sat beside the open window, allowing the wind to whip through her hair. She wore a light dress patterned with tiny flowers. Jennifer tried not to look at her knees. "You like Mark," Tiffany said suddenly. Jennifer nearly missed the turn. "Do you always begin conversations like that?" "No." "Then why now?" Tiffany closed the window. "Because I don't want to create trouble." "You haven't created anything." "He watches me." "Yes." Tiffany turned toward her. "You admit it?" "I have eyes." Most wives pretend not to notice. Most wives believe silence can make a husband blind. Tiffany nervously smoothed her dress. "I'm not going to sleep with him." Jennifer kept her eyes on the road. "What if I didn't object?" The car became quiet. Even the wind beyond the glass seemed to disappear. "You're joking," Tiffany said. "I haven't decided yet." "Why would you want that?" "I don't know." The answer was more honest than any beautiful speech. Tiffany looked out the window. "My ex-husband cheated on me for almost a year." "Mark doesn't cheat." "Because I haven't allowed him to." Jennifer glanced sharply at her. Tiffany smiled. "Now you're angry." "A little." "Good." "Why is that good?" "Because it means you care." They were silent for several minutes. Jennifer felt the conversation becoming dangerous far too quickly. But she could no longer stop it. "Do you want Mark?" she asked. Tiffany did not answer at once. "He's a good man." "That isn't an answer." "Yes." Jennifer tightened her hands on the steering wheel. The word echoed through her as jealousy and excitement at once. "And me?" she asked. Tiffany turned her head. "What about you?" "You look at me. You're beautiful." "That isn't an answer either." Tiffany smiled slowly. "Then don't ask questions if you're afraid of the answer." They barely returned to the subject inside the store. They bought towels, bed linens, and cheap lamps for the rooms. Tiffany chose a red dress. It was simple, with thin straps and soft fabric that followed the shape of her body. "Buy it," Jennifer said. "I have nowhere to wear it." "We have a veranda. A very glamorous venue. And wine." Tiffany met her gaze. "Is that an invitation?" "Maybe." "Does Mark know?" "Not yet." That evening, Jennifer told her husband about the conversation. He sat on the bed and ran a hand over the back of his neck several times. "You asked whether she wanted me?" "Yes." "And she answered?" "Yes." "What exactly did she say?" Jennifer slowly opened the top button of her blouse. "Guess." Mark looked at her fingers. "Jennifer, you're playing with fire. We live in the desert." "I'm serious." "So am I." She stepped closer and stood between his knees. "Do you want her to come to the house?" Mark put his hands on her hips. "I want you." "That wasn't my question." He exhaled. "Yes." "Say it properly." "I want her to come." Jennifer felt her heart beat faster. "What if I change my mind?" "Then nothing happens." "What if she changes hers?" "Then nothing happens." "What if one time isn't enough for you?" Mark looked into her eyes. "Then we talk." "You won't go to her in secret?" "No." "You won't fall in love with her just because she's younger and still laughs at your terrible jokes?" He tightened his hands on her hips. "You laugh too. Out of pity." "I love you." "Say it again." "I love you." Jennifer bent down and kissed him. Mark pulled her close enough for her to feel the tension in his body. They stayed awake for a long time that night. They talked about rules. Jennifer would remain present. Tiffany could stop at any moment. No one would wake up and pretend nothing had happened. "Are you sure?" Mark asked shortly before dawn. Jennifer lay with her head on his chest. "No." He ran his fingers slowly over her back. "Then we won't do it." "I didn't say I don't want it." "What do you feel?" She searched for the right word for a long time. "Hunger." Tiffany arrived after 9 on Saturday night. By then, the final guest had collected his key, and the neon sign had painted the courtyard red. Jennifer set the table on the veranda. Cheese, grapes, bread, and a bottle of wine. Slow blues drifted from the old jukebox. Mark changed his shirt twice. "The second one looked better," Jennifer said. "You could have told me earlier. I enjoyed watching you get nervous." He paused near the door. "You aren't nervous at all?" "So nervous I want to hit you." "That's reassuring." Someone knocked. Tiffany stood on the doorstep in the red dress. Her hair was loose. There was only the faintest gloss on her lips. "I almost didn't come," she admitted. "I almost didn't invite you," Jennifer replied. Mark opened the door wider. "Come in." At first, the conversation was awkward. They discussed the motel, the weather, and the man in room 6, who had once again tried to leave with a towel. Tiffany held her wineglass in both hands. Mark spoke too much. Jennifer watched them both. Beneath the table, Mark's foot sometimes touched hers. Each time, it felt as though he were checking whether she was all right. She did not move away. After the second glass, Tiffany relaxed. "Are we going to spend the entire night talking about towels?" she asked. Mark stopped speaking. Jennifer placed her glass on the table. "No." Tiffany looked at her. "Good. Do you understand why we invited you?" "I think so." "Say it." Mark glanced at his wife. She knew he thought she was being too direct. But directness was safer than elegant hints now. Tiffany ran one finger around the stem of her glass. You want to know what happens if we stop pretending we don't feel anything. And what do you feel? Jennifer asked. Tiffany looked at Mark. Then at her. I'm attracted to both of you. Mark released a slow breath. Jennifer felt a wave of heat move over her skin. I need an honest answer, she said. Did you come for him or for both of us? At first, for him. Mark lowered his eyes. Tiffany continued. Then you drove me into town. What changed? I realized I was more afraid of your eyes than his. Why? Because he looks at me as if he wants to touch me. Tiffany smiled slightly. And you look at me as if you have already decided how everything is going to happen. Jennifer stood. She walked around the table and stopped beside Tiffany. I haven't decided anything for you. I know. You can leave. I know. You can stop us at any second. I don't want to leave. Jennifer held out her hand. Tiffany placed her fingers in it. Her palm was cool. Jennifer gently drew her to her feet. Now they stood almost against each other. Mark remained by the table. He did not move, though the tension in his gaze gave him away. You're beautiful, Jennifer said. Tiffany smiled nervously. Right now, I feel like a woman who came to a job interview and forgot what position she applied for. Then we'll begin with something simple. Jennifer lifted her free hand and brushed a strand of hair from Tiffany's face. Her fingertips touched Tiffany's cheek. Tiffany closed her eyes for a second. May I? Jennifer asked. Tiffany nodded. The first kiss was brief. Soft, almost experimental. Jennifer tasted wine and felt the faint trembling of unfamiliar lips. When she moved back, Tiffany stepped forward herself. The second kiss was deeper. Tiffany's hand settled on Jennifer's waist. The touch was unexpectedly confident. Jennifer heard Mark breathe heavily. She did not end the kiss. Instead, she pulled Tiffany closer and allowed her husband to watch. There was no humiliation in his gaze. Only admiration, confusion, and desire. Tiffany moved away first. Her cheeks had turned red. Your turn, Jennifer said to Mark. He stood. He approached slowly, as if afraid a sudden movement might break the moment. Are you sure? He asked his wife. Ask her. Mark looked at Tiffany. Are you sure? Yes. He touched her shoulder. His fingers moved along the thin strap of her dress, but did not lower it. Tiffany lifted her face. Mark kissed her carefully. Jennifer saw his palm settle against Tiffany's back. She saw Tiffany freeze at first, then press closer. Jealousy flashed inside Jennifer's chest. Sharp, almost painful. She allowed herself to feel it. She did not hide from it. But the jealousy came with powerful excitement. Mark was kissing another woman. And still, he kept searching for his wife with his eyes. Jennifer stepped behind him and ran her fingers over his shoulder. He turned his head immediately. Are you all right? He asked. Don't stop. Tiffany took Jennifer's hand. Come closer. They moved into the living room. The floor lamp cast a soft glow, and the music sounded quieter there. Mark sat on the edge of the sofa. Tiffany stood in front of him, still holding Jennifer's fingers. Jennifer felt Tiffany's nervousness slowly turn into desire. She could see it in her breathing. In the way Tiffany stopped hiding her eyes. In the way her fingers tightened around Jennifer's hand when Mark touched her waist again. Tell us if you don't like something, Jennifer reminded her. I like it. Mark kissed Tiffany's neck. She closed her eyes and released a quiet breath. Jennifer touched her face, making her open them again. Look at me. Tiffany obeyed. There was so much trust in her gaze that Jennifer forgot everything else for a moment. She kissed her again. Mark stood between them, touching both women. One of his hands rested on his wife's thigh, as if reminding her that their shared history still belonged to them. Tiffany's red dress slipped softly from one shoulder. Mark stopped. Continue? Yes, she said. Jennifer lowered the strap from her other shoulder. The fabric slipped a little farther. Tiffany shivered in the cool air. Jennifer covered her shoulders with both hands and slowly moved her fingers downward. Mark watched. But Jennifer no longer felt like a spectator. She had become part of what was happening. And that mattered more than anything else. Their first night was not perfect. At one point, Mark reached for Tiffany too quickly, and Jennifer said sharply, "Slow down." He stopped immediately. Tiffany laughed nervously. "I feel like a car someone is teaching him to park." Considering Mark's driving skills, the instruction is necessary, Jennifer replied. The tension dissolved. They began kissing again. Mark no longer rushed. His palms moved carefully, as if he were not learning a stranger's body, but exploring a new boundary of trust. Jennifer watched how Tiffany responded to his touch. To the light pressure of his fingers. To kisses near her neck. To the rough brush of his cheek against her skin. When Tiffany's breathing grew heavier, Jennifer felt heat rise beneath her own skin. She sat beside them. Mark reached for her immediately. He kissed his wife hungrily, as if he had been holding himself back for too long. Jennifer tasted Tiffany on his lips. It should have felt wrong. Instead, her body answered at once. She caught Mark by the collar and pulled him closer. "Are you still with me?" she whispered. "Only with you. Don't lie." He looked toward Tiffany. "With both of you." Honesty proved stronger than a beautiful lie again. Jennifer kissed him. Tiffany sat beside them and watched. Now she was the spectator. There was no embarrassment in her eyes. Only dark, steady desire. Jennifer held out a hand to her. "Don't stay over there." Tiffany came closer. The three of them ended up together on the sofa, touching one another, sometimes laughing at the awkwardness, sometimes falling silent when the tension became too strong. The buttons of Mark's shirt gradually opened. Jennifer ran her palm over his chest. Tiffany touched him next. Their fingers met against warm skin. Mark closed his eyes. "If I die now, don't call the police. We'll say the air conditioner repair finally finished you," Tiffany replied. Jennifer laughed and kissed her. With every passing minute, their movements became more confident. Not rougher. Simply more honest. Clothing fell slowly to the floor without drama. Tiffany still tried to cover herself at times. Jennifer gently moved her hands away. "Don't hide. No one has liked me without clothes in a long time. Your former husband was blind." Mark ran his fingers over her shoulder. "She's right." Tiffany looked at him. "Don't say that because you think you're required to." "I'm not required to do anything." He touched her lips. "I simply can't stop looking." Jennifer felt the familiar sting of jealousy. But this time, she did not move away. She placed a hand at the back of Mark's neck and guided his face toward hers. "Then look at me too." He kissed her. Slowly. Deeply. In a way he had not kissed her for years. Tiffany pressed against them from the side. The warmth of three bodies blended together. The air conditioner rattled, yet the room still felt hot. Cicadas cried outside. Neon light passed through the blinds and left red lines across the walls and sheets. They moved into the bedroom. At first, Jennifer truly sat in the chair. She wanted to watch. To see Mark as he had been when they were younger. Hungry. Strong. A little out of control. He stood beside the bed kissing Tiffany. His hands rested on her waist. Tiffany arched toward him, forgetting her earlier embarrassment. Jennifer watched them and slowly drank her wine. She felt powerful not because she controlled them. She felt powerful because she could say no at any moment, yet chose to continue. Mark lifted his eyes. Jen. She understood that he was not calling her out of politeness. He truly needed her there. Jennifer set down her glass. She went to them. First, she kissed her husband. Then Tiffany. You're beautiful, she whispered. So are you, Tiffany replied. Jennifer lay beside them. After that, the night stopped being a scene for two people and an observer. It became shared. Kisses, heavy breathing, the damp heat of skin, and the quiet creak of the bed blended with music from the living room. Sometimes one of them paused to ask whether everything was all right. Sometimes the answer was a kiss. Sometimes laughter. Sometimes a short, hoarse, "Don't stop." The rest remained behind the closed bedroom door. Not because they were ashamed. Some nights simply lose their meaning when people try to explain them too precisely. Jennifer woke first in the morning. Mark lay in the middle. One arm held his wife. The other rested around Tiffany's waist. The sight was almost comical. Three grown adults who had talked about rules the previous evening now slept tangled in the sheets and in one another. Jennifer felt afraid. The fear came suddenly. What if Mark wanted only Tiffany now? What if the night had opened a door they could never close? She carefully lifted his arm and got out of bed. Jennifer made coffee in the kitchen. A few minutes later, Tiffany appeared. She was wearing one of Mark's long shirts. Jennifer looked at her longer than she intended. I can change, Tiffany said quietly. No. You look as if you regret it. Jennifer set her cup on the table. I don't know. Do you want me to leave? No. Then what do you want? Jennifer rubbed a tired hand over her face. I want to understand what happens next. Tiffany sat opposite her. Next, we talk. Mark could fall in love with you. He could. The answer was too calm. Jennifer tensed. Does that please you? No. Tiffany placed her palms on the table. I don't want to take your husband away. People rarely plan that in advance. I have already been the woman who was betrayed. She looked directly into Jennifer's eyes. I'm not going to become the woman who does that to someone else. Mark appeared in the doorway. He was barefoot, disheveled, and unexpectedly serious. I heard that. Jennifer turned toward him. Wonderful. Mark came closer and sat beside her. I don't want to leave you. Right now. Ever. Don't make grand declarations after one night. He took her hand. Then I'll say it simply. Mark looked at Tiffany. Then back at his wife. I liked it. Jennifer waited. A lot, he added. But without you, it would not have existed. She exhaled slowly. What if I say it never happens again? Then it never happens again. Tiffany nodded. I agree. Jennifer looked at them both. You're too obedient. Mark smiled. You made the rules. I'm not finished. What have you decided? Jennifer picked up her coffee. Nothing yet. Tiffany smiled. Then there's still hope. From the outside, the motel did not change after that night. The signs still flickered sometimes. The air conditioner in room 4 continued to rattle. The man in room 6 eventually stole 2 towels. But inside the Red Rock, a new rhythm appeared. Tiffany did not move into the owner's house. She continued living in her room and working as a housekeeper. Mark did not sneak toward her door at night. Jennifer did not turn herself into a guard. They established one simple rule. No secrets. If someone felt jealous, they said it. If someone wanted the night repeated, they did not pretend it was merely a passing thought. If Jennifer or Tiffany said no, the discussion ended. At first, they did not repeat the night. 1 week passed. Then another. The tension between them did not disappear. It lived in short looks, accidental touches, and pauses in conversation. One afternoon, Tiffany passed Mark carrying a basket of laundry. He stepped aside to let her through. Their shoulders touched. Both of them became still. Jennifer watched from the office. That evening, she told her husband. "You still want her?" Mark did not pretend otherwise. "Yes. She still wants you." "How do you know?" "Because women notice the things men believe are secret." He came closer. "And you? What about me? Do you want to do it again?" Jennifer ran her fingers over his shirt. "Maybe." The second night was less awkward and more dangerous. Now they knew what they liked. They knew how Tiffany reacted to Jennifer's kisses. They knew Mark became impatient when the two women whispered together and ignored him. They knew jealousy did not disappear, but could turn into desire when no one hid it. Still, nothing could remain perfect forever. A month later, Tiffany received a letter from her former husband. He asked her to come back. He promised he had changed. He wrote that he missed her and wanted to begin again. She did not tell them immediately. Jennifer noticed the change first. Tiffany became quiet, made several mistakes while cleaning, and once forgot to lock a room. "What is going on?" Jennifer asked. "Nothing. Don't lie to me." Tiffany took the letter from her pocket. Jennifer read it. "Do you want to go back?" "I don't know." "That means part of you does. I lived with him for 8 years. And he cheated on you. He says he understands now." Jennifer gave a bitter laugh. Men always understand everything when a woman stops waiting. "Are you talking about him, or yourself?" The question was too accurate. Jennifer placed the letter on the table. "I'm not going to hold you here." "What about Mark? What about him? Would he care?" "Ask him." Tiffany did that in the evening. The three of them sat beneath the neon sign. Mark remained silent for a long time after reading the letter. "Do you love him?" he asked. "I once did." "That isn't an answer." "I don't know what I feel." Mark stood and walked toward the road. Jennifer saw his shoulders tighten. "He's jealous," Tiffany said quietly. "Of course. Aren't you angry?" "I am." "With me?" "With everyone." Mark returned. "I don't want you to leave." Tiffany looked at him. "Because of the job?" "Don't make me say something foolish. Say something honest." He exhaled. "I've grown attached to you." Jennifer felt pain. She had expected those words. She had feared them. And still, they landed harder than she imagined. Mark looked at his wife. "I don't love her the way I love you." "Not yet." "Jennifer. I'm only being honest." Tiffany stood. "I don't want to destroy your marriage." "You haven't destroyed it," Jennifer said. "But I could. Only if we begin lying." Tiffany looked at the letter. "I'm not going back to him." "Because of us?" Mark asked. "Because of me." She tore the envelope in half. "I spent too long believing the past becomes more valuable simply because it lasted many years. Jennifer felt relief. But with relief came a new understanding. Tiffany was no longer a temporary employee. She was not a woman they could invite into their bedroom and return to a separate room the next morning. She had become part of their lives. That frightened Jennifer. But the old life, where she and Mark had gradually stopped seeing each other, frightened her more. 6 months later, Tiffany still lived at the Red Rock. She no longer worked only as a housekeeper. Jennifer taught her to handle reservations and bookkeeping. Mark built her a small cottage behind the motel. Not too close to the owner's house. But not too far away either. Their relationship did not become a fairy tale. Sometimes Jennifer was jealous. Sometimes Tiffany felt like an outsider. Sometimes Mark said something so foolish that both women stopped speaking to him. But they learned to discuss desire before it became secrecy. The Red Rock slowly came back to life. Travelers began stopping more often beneath the restored neon sign. Music played on the veranda on Saturday nights. Tiffany poured the wine. Mark grilled the meat. Jennifer sat near the desk and watched them. Sometimes Mark caught her looking. The fire had returned to his eyes. Not only because of Tiffany. Because of Jennifer too. Late at night, after the last guest closed his door, the three of them gathered in the owner's house. Sometimes they only talked. Sometimes they drank wine. Sometimes the music became slower, and the distance between them gradually disappeared. Jennifer no longer sat in the chair like a director. She did not need to control every look and every touch. She knew Mark chose her not because no other woman was near. He chose her even when another woman stood beside them. And Tiffany was no longer a runaway hiding beside an old highway. She had found a place where no one expected her to pretend to be convenient, weak, or grateful. One evening, they sat outside the motel and watched the red neon light spread across the empty road. "Do you regret it?" Mark asked. Jennifer considered the question. "Sometimes." He tensed. "What exactly?" "That we spent so many years afraid to tell the truth." Tiffany rested her head on Jennifer's shoulder. "Most people would rather die quietly from boredom." "That sounds optimistic," Mark said. Jennifer smiled. "But honest." She took her husband's hand. With her other hand, she touched Tiffany's fingers. A car passed somewhere in the distance. The cicadas continued their endless evening song. The old sign flickered above the motel. From the outside, the Red Rock looked almost the same as it had 10 years earlier. But inside, a fire burned that no one could mistake for habit. Do you think an honest confession of desire can save a marriage that silence is slowly killing? And could you share the person you love if you knew that freedom was exactly what would make them return to you every time?